Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Colin, Mochrie, and Brad Sherwood bring improv comedy to Warner Theater on Thursday in Washington, D.C. I spoke with Mochrie about his hilarious comedy career, namely the British and American versions of Whose Line Is It Anyway, alongside Ryan Stiles, Wayne Brady, and host Drew Carey. Hey, Colin Mochrie, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me.
We're talking because you and your cohort, Brad Sherwood of the old Whose Line days, are coming to Warner Theater for Scared Scriptless on Thursday, September 9th. Where does this fall in the tour? I mean, you've probably been sidelined with COVID for over a year and a half, but when did you guys start getting back out there?
We had our second show last weekend, so it's very early on in our new tour. Yeah.
How did you spend COVID? You know, as a comedian like yourself, are you just like trying jokes on your family, or are you just bored out of your mind, or how's the last year and a half been for you?
Actually, Brad and I, with our tech team, came up with a way that we're still able to do our show in a Zoom background. Our tech people worked it out so even though Brad is in Las Vegas, I'm in Toronto, it looked like we were in the same room. We could go into people's audience members' homes and have them in our scenes. The only difference was it's weird doing a comedy show to no laughter. I mean, Brad is totally used to it, but for me, it threw me off a little.
Yeah, for Brad, yeah, he never gets the last, right? No, he's hilarious. I know you're just ribbing him, but so what's Scared Scriptless like then? Tell me about this particular show. So now that you're not having to do it virtual anymore, how cool is it going to be that you're not going to have that laughter that you said you were missing? You know, like what if our listeners show up, like what sort of, I guess, improv games and stuff are going to be a part of the show?
Well, we like to say it's sort of a live version of Whose Line without the tall guy and the black guy. There'll be a lot of games familiar to Whose Line fans, like sound effects, and there's games that we've sort of adapted because it's just the two of us. We don't have a host like Drew or Aisha, but it's all again starts with an audience suggestion. We have some audience members improvising with us, so it's just goofy fun.
You said, quote, the tall guy and the black guy. Of course, we're talking about your legendary Whose Line co-stars, Ryan Stiles, the tall guy, and then, of course, Wayne Brady. Dish on them really fast before we dish on Brad. But, what made Ryan and Wayne just so hilarious?
Well, I mean, I've known Ryan for over 40 years now. So we've been improvising for a long time. I wouldn't want him to take this the wrong way, but you just start laughing when you see him. He looks like a Mad Magazine cartoon, and but he's very funny. One of the best improvisers I've ever worked with, and of course Wayne is multi-talented. He can do everything: impressions, songs, improvise. So I've never really liked him, but I can understand why people do.
Of course you do. He's it's all of you really. It's hard to find people that are so quick on your feet as you all. All right, well now roast your actual cohort for this show, Brad Sherwood. I mean, there was a big rotating group back in the day. There was Greg Proops. I mean, there were so many really funny ones depending which week you turned in. But Brad was always a favorite too. So what made him perfect to go on a tour like this?
I felt bad for him. Nothing was happening much for him. So I thought, hey, why not take him on the road, help him see the world? Brad was actually the one who came up with the idea of the two-man improv troupe. So we thought, well, we'll try it for a week and see what happens. And now, 20 years later, still going strong. And I have to say, it's been a really good relationship. I mean, we've been very in tune with how we want the show to be. We're constantly trying to find ways to make it better and make it more exciting and harder for us. So it's been, and don't tell him this, it's been a good relationship.
Well, yeah, I can't help if he listens to this, but I won't tell him personally. So cool. I mean, so you said it's sort of like the Whose Line show on the road. Is it all the same kind of stuff, like Scenes from a Hat and the Irish Jig? And I mean, what sort of actual bits are there?
Let me think. Well, aside from sound effects, we do moving bodies, I think, and a lot of we've got a little bit of music involved, but there are a few games that are only will only be seen on the stage with us because on television everything has to be fast, has to be short, snappy. On stage we can take a little more time. So we have scenes that can go 10, 15, 20 minutes, which you can't do on television. So I don't want to tell you too much. Come and see the show.
Exactly. Well, I would love to hear, about how you got started in the comedy biz to begin with. So I know, you go all the way back to, Second City, the Toronto version, right? Like in the 80s?
Yeah, last century. Yeah, it was a while ago. Yeah, before I started improvising in 1982, where just sort of this boom sort of happened. Nobody really knew what improv was, and then got into a Second City. Ryan had joined, I think, the year before I did, um, and it's a great training ground. You quickly learn your weaknesses and your strengths, and you can work on that. It really is like a comedy college because you're doing 7 shows a week, and after every show there's an improv set, so you get to hone your skills. And then this Who's Line was just a bonus. We're all very fortunate this show came along that basically put a spotlight on the one skill we have and gave us all careers.
Nice. Now I know that that Second City in Toronto was right after the Chicago one, right? Like Chicago was first and then they did the one in Toronto. And I know it not only boosted your career professionally, but it also changed your personal life, right? The person who hired you there was
Yeah, was the director of the touring company. So it was a tough audition. It was between me and the cute guy, and because I have stamina, I managed to make it. Yeah. So and now 32 years later, we're still happy together. So Second City has been a very important part of my life.
That's so great. All right, cool. Well, so you mentioned Whose Line came along, but before the American version, there was the British TV comedy show, the improv show.
Hmm.
How'd you get cast in that to begin with?
Well, I was actually at Second City, and there were because improv was still sort of a new art form in Britain. They wanted to get some North Americans over to sort of fill their stable, so they were doing this cross country audition tour. They came and saw our show, liked it, and auditioned the cast the next morning at 8, which is prime time for comedy. Um, so because we had worked together as a cast, we were doing that thing you do in improv where everybody supports each other and everybody's, you know, connected. So because we worked as an ensemble, none of us got cast. The next year, my wife Deb and I had moved down to LA because she had gotten a show that had been produced. I auditioned with people I didn't know, and it became, hey, screw you guys, look at me. And through that, I got a job. So there's an important lesson for you kids out there. Always look out for yourself.
Screw you guys, look at me. Awesome. Well, I know it aired on, Channel 4 there in the UK for like a
Mm.
decade. It was like 88 to 99, I believe. And what was Clive? I want to get to Drew Carey in the American version in a second, but before we move off the British one, what was Clive Anderson's what were his skill sets particular, as a host? What did you like about him as a host?
Well, I mean, what I love about all of our hosts is they're so singular. I mean, Clive was the quintessential British host. He was sharp, he was sarcastic, he was witty, never at a loss for words. He used to be a barrister. So, what I love when you watch the first couple of episodes, how nervous and stiff he is, and then towards the end, he's still stiff, but he's a lot more relaxed. Um, but we just had the 30th anniversary a couple of years ago, and we did some live shows at the Royal Albert Hall in London. And Clive was there hosting, and it was like turning the clock back 30 years. Josie was there, and Greg, Mike McShane. Uh, it's always lovely to see those guys.
Great for sure. And then of course the Drew Carey version, the American spin-off. I guess everyone's seeing how much you're making folks laugh over in Britain. And so ABC does the American spin-off. I think it runs from like 1999 to 2007, but um, wh- talk about Drew Carey's as a host. Watching him crack up and hit that buzzer was just as much as just as funny as what you guys were doing.
Yeah, what was great about Drew was he was a big fan of the show before he hosted it, so he loved being in that chair and watching us. I mean, I can't say enough about the man. He was incredibly supportive, incredibly generous, and it was, on his say so that second or whose line is it anyway got on the air. So we're all very grateful that he got that show going, and again gave us all careers. Has always supported us. Always fun to work with. He never improvised before he did the show, and the executive said, we really want you to do it, and he was a little leery, but immediately said okay. He would book time at the comedy clubs and bring us all down. We would improvise so that he would feel more relaxed doing it. So he has a real great work ethic, which I think is really admirable.
Yeah, for sure. When did you guys, do you know how they came up with that whole famous catchphrase of where everything's made up and the points don't matter?
I have no idea. I have
But
no idea.
I thought it was great though because there's so many of these shows, even like the sports, what is I don't know, like Around the Horn, where they try to assign points for stuff, and you're like, no, it's you can't assign points to art, and especially not comedy. So I thought it was
Yeah.
perfect.
When they were trying to get the show going in America, um, that was always a sticking point. They would go, well, how does the scoring system work? And they would say, well, it doesn't mean anything. It's just for editing purposes. There's no real winner at the end. But people with certain companies in America wanted one of us like to win a refrigerator every week or something. So I think that's probably where it came out of.
Yeah, nothing more American than needing a scoreboard, right?
Exactly.
But all right, cool. Well, did you have a favorite game that you guys did? I mean, we mentioned some of them earlier about how there's some holdovers for your tour with Brad, but back on the actual show itself, did you have any favorite games that you feel like you always rose to the occasion?
Um, Greatest Hits was always one of my favorite games because it gave Ryan and I a chance, first of all, to sit down, which I always loved, and also just to kind of goof around and banter, and then hand it over to these incredible musicians and singers. So it was a perfect scene for me to be a participant and an observer. I got to, goof around with Ryan, and then got to see what those guys would come up with, whatever, weird stuff we threw at them. And yeah, that was consistently a favorite game of mine.
That was where you guys would go. It's like you're selling one of those infomercials for like
Yeah.
a album that with this track scrolling down the screen. Yeah, you guys were always hilarious. Cool. And then some of the funniest ones, at least in my memory, were when you would have some hilarious celebrity guests on. I mean, talk about. I mean, especially in hindsight, now that we've lost Robin Williams, but that episode was so freaking hilarious. And just talk about, I mean, was there anyone quicker on his feet? And he was like a cosmic treat to all of us.
Oh, again, one of those guys I cannot say enough about. He was obviously someone who inspired us and who we all admired. And then when he came on the show, I mean, he was an Oscar winner and he was coming on our show. And he was just one of the guys, one of those people who knew all the crew's names immediately and was just there to have fun. He was shooting a movie up in Vancouver, and he had just basically flown down to do the show, and his manager kept trying to get him to leave a little early to get back to the set. And Robin said, "No, no, let's do this until it's done." And he raised everyone's energy 150%. It was hard to be close to him and just, be lethargic. There was no way. You were immediately caught up in his excitement and his energy. And it definitely was a highlight, I think, for all of us.
Oh, you just smile thinking about it. What a beautiful soul. And then I think I remember trying to think of another. Richard Simmons was also hilarious. I mean, no, like you guys trying to put each other in uncompromising positions, but how fun was it having him on?
You know what? The clip with Richard, all modesty aside, I think is one of the funniest scenes ever in the history of television. And a lot of it has to do with just the total commitment that Richard gave to that scene. He's not known as an improviser, but man, when it is the scene that people always mention to me when they talk about the show, and it's the scene that people say, "Oh, if you've never seen Who's Line, watch this scene. It sort of encapsulates what the entire show is about." So again, it was one of the longest laughs I think we ever had in the show, and they actually there's not a lot of editing in the show, but they had to cut down the laughter of that one particular moment because it went on for like a minute and a half. And I was just standing there with Richard Simmons' head bobbing at my crotch. So there's only, so long someone can look at that.
Right. It was, and you're feeding quarters into the machine, quote unquote. It was just, man, it was just, and I think Drew Carey takes his glasses off, wiping tears
Oh,
from
yeah.
his
I
eyes.
thought Drew was going to die. Yeah.
I thought we all were gonna die. It was absolutely hilarious, absolutely hilarious. Well, that show, I mean, not only catapulted, it allowed you and Brad to do this tour, but I know it catapulted Drew Carey to take over for Bob Barker on The Price Is Right, and Wayne Brady did like Let's Make a Deal, and of course that Chappelle Show sketch, which was hilarious. But I mean, talk about sort of the post life of Whose Line for a lot of these guys. Like, for instance, I mean, how do you think Drew's been doing on Price Is Right?
Drew's been doing great. We kind of keep in touch in Twitter. I'd love to see him again. Chip Aston, who was on our show, went on to great success in Nashville, and is now like a mainstay at the Grand Ole Opry. He's doing great. Greg Proops is always touring. He's touring with some of the guys from Whose Line, like Ryan and Jeff Davis. But he also, does a lot of stand up. His podcast, The Smartest Man in the World, is always fun to listen to and doing really well. So everyone really used this launching pad of Whose Line to put it to great use.
Oh yeah. And did you see the Wayne Brady and Chappelle thing?
I did, and
What
I
would
have
you
to
what
say,
did you think just playing? I mean, the secret to that is just playing against type because we saw this lovable, almost musical theater kind of guy. But you know what I mean? Like he went completely against type on the Chappelle show.
although did he? I think pretty much that was the closest we ever saw for the real Wayne Brady. It was almost a documentary.
Oh, that's great. That's great. What would he and all the other guys say about you? We've had them talking, dishing. You've been dishing on all your Who's Line co-stars, but what would they say about Colin Mochrie if you weren't here and I was interviewing them
Oh,
about
I,
you?
I blush to almost think about the wonderful things they'd say about me. I think the beauty of me, well, there's a good start to a sentence,
The beauty.
is that I am really low maintenance. I'm just there to have fun and try to make my partners look good. And if that's not happening, then try to destroy them by making them laugh. So I've managed to destroy most of them at times, which is such a great feeling because they're all so jaded and all seen so much comedy. But I think they would say, yeah, he's a lot of fun to work with. Really look forward to it, and gives great massages.
And some of those sketches, yeah, you have. Well, I appreciate it. I guess in closing, I think the last time we talked to you, you were coming for some NSO Pops thing at the Kennedy Center, like a Second Guide
Oh
City.
yeah,
How did that turn out?
I mean, it was great. It was a show that combined sketches and used the symphony. So, we actually did a make a song with a symphony behind me, which is something I never in a million years thought would happen, that I'm going to be singing with a full orchestra behind me. So it was, every night was amazing. It's a great orchestra, and the sketches were a lot of fun, and it was a big success.
Yeah, when you got into comedy, I'm sure that wasn't really on the list of possibilities of singing at the Kennedy Center with an orchestra. You've done it all.
So I've
Um,
done it all.
he's done it all, my friends. Well, just in closing, so that was Kennedy Center, and now you're going to be, just across town, not far away, at Warner Theater. Have you brought this tour there before? Like, what? How cool is it to play there? That's a historic venue as well.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure we have been there before. Yeah, Brad and I are both big fans of old theater, so it's amazing the history of a lot of these places we go to that had, people like Laurel and Hardy and Chaplin go through, and now it's, us. But you feel that sense of history when you go there, and they're beautiful places to work in, and the crews are always great. So we're very happy that we get a chance to tour the country and see some of the most amazing performing areas in the world.
Which would be Laurel and which would be Hardy? Who are you and Brad? Which one's which?
Oh, I guess, oh, good one. I'd be more Laurel. I'm not talking physically now, but yeah, I'll give him Oliver Hardy.
Comedically. Well, or is there another duo that you think would be more apt other than Lauren Hardy compared to you guys? Is it Abbott Costello? I mean, Mochrie and Sherwood could be it.
Yeah, we could be originals. I think we've stolen from every comedic. You know, we were big fans of Harvey Korman and Tim Conway,
Oh
and
yeah.
had a chance to meet them. So I think that's probably the closest to our dynamic.
Man, rest in peace. Wow, but Carol Burnett, you're right. Watching them make each other crack up was what made that show funny. Just like watching you guys make each other laugh is what was funny. So awesome. Well, I appreciate you've been really generous with your time and even had a couple good zingers in here. So and brought back great memories, the Robin Williams and the Richard Simmons. Man, I'm just cracking up talking to you. So
Thank you.
thank you so much for the laughs over the years, sir.
Oh, well, thank you for laughing and giving us a career.
We'll keep laughing so you can keep having a career. Again, everybody, it's Thursday, September 9th down at Warner Theater. Colin Mochrie, Brad Sherwood, Scared Scriptless. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.